Okay, thank you, Alice. Yeah, you might see me occasionally turning around. I'm trying to get the fan to blow on me at the moment because I was recently in Malaga in southern Spain. I had to go down to a show and give a talk in Malaga, and I thought it was warm there. Except I've spoken to my contact that I was with in Malaga today, and they tell me it's slightly cooler in Malaga today than it is here where I am. So I'm desperate to get back to Malaga, quite frankly, because it's just ridiculously warm. So the fan is doing its best, but it's not getting very far. So if you see me expire at some stage, I'm sure Alice will just take over and keep us going. So let's get on with today's masterclass. Now, I've titled this "What Your Marketing Must Say to Convert Your Leads," and we'll get into what I'm talking about that. What we're talking about today is that thing which actually takes the lead to the committed customer. For those of you who don't know anything about me, and just let me introduce myself very briefly. First of all, this picture was taken about 1,000 years ago and very, very many kilograms ago. But this is me. I was a scientist for a large number of years and decided that it wasn't science that I wanted to do. And so I started working in building and scaling and selling businesses following that career. And now I sort of mentor people like yourselves, managers, on how to build and scale their business and really generate those sustained leads, recurring profits. I thought that my training as a medical researcher and doctor would actually inhibit my success as an entrepreneur. And I was absolutely wrong. And I've discovered one of the things that I now bring to the table is to take some of that scientific rigor, and I give people that a sort of machine which helps them to build momentum in their business. And I think of it in exactly the same way as I do the sort of research I used to do, which is that you have to have sustainable, well thought through processes, procedures, even in things like sales and marketing, to really build those sort of what I see as the sort of 5 pillars that you use to really generate momentum in your business. For those of you who, and Alice will point this to you in the links, I gave a masterclass not so long ago about how to generate those leads, and it does a good thing here is illustrated in that what we use things such as a landing page, social media, and email in order to try and convert people to understand what your product, your solution to their problem is. But today we're going to focus on that holy grail. The holy grail, that is, how do you once you've captured those leads and they're interested, how do you then get them to commit to being your customer? What do you have to do? What do you have to say? What are the things, that the processes you need to put in place which allows that lead to move down to becoming an actual customer? It really is the holy grail. This is the sort of thing that I talk to sales directors, sales managers about, where they talk about the fact that they've got so many leads coming into the business, but none of them are converting into customers. What do they have to do to actually make that transition? And it is the tough transition. It's the sort of thing which keeps a lot of sales business leaders up at night. Now, for those of you who are at the previous masterclass, you'll know that I talk about these 10 elements. And the ones on and I call them elements. I've got a scientific background, so I do it. So the ones on the left of this sort of table are what I call my marketing elements. That's kind of where I was last time. I was talking to you a lot about the marketing elements. But on this masterclass, I'm going to switch my focus. We're going to be talking about the sales elements of the table here. So we're going to be talking about things like, what do you need to say in your headline? What irresistible offer do you have to say? What do you mean? What do we mean by features and benefits? What is actually meant by those terms? Why do we have to give a reason why? And what do we mean by a really fabulous call to action? So, having said that, we're going to focus mainly on the right-hand side of that table, I'm immediately going to go back over and break my rule, and we're going to start at the top of the left-hand side. What I mean by that is the element that I call your perfect client. Now, let's not beat around the bush. You can't sell everything to everyone. You have to understand exactly who your perfect client is. So you have to understand exactly who they are, identify them through their interests and what their pain points are, because the one thing you're going to need to do throughout all of your marketing and sales is have a very clear idea of who the person is that has the problem for which you have a solution. I'll say that again. They have a problem, you have a solution. And in order to communicate that solution to them, you need to understand their language. You need to understand their interest, because you need to put it to them and you need to say it in such a way that they understand you. Communication is what the listener does, the receiver of the information. It's not what you do. It's what they do. If they haven't understood you because you've not put it to them in their language, you've not explained your solution in the way that they understand, they won't act upon it. And so it's all very well you saying, but I put it to them in a way that I thought was really good. But if they haven't understood it, they're not going to act upon it. So the communication issue is yours. You have to explain it to them in their language. So therefore, you have to understand what their needs are. You have to understand their problem and how your product or service can truly solve their need. And then you have to understand what motivates them, because by understanding what motivates them, you can overcome that barrier that prevents them from taking action. So really get clear on these things, and then get very clear on where they are. Because once again, I have a concept that I talk about. Why are you making it so hard? The one thing you don't want to be doing is if your audience is on Facebook, and I was dealing with this with somebody the other day, if your audience is on Facebook, don't set up an Etsy shop and ask them to leave Facebook in order to go over to Etsy. Go to where they are. It just lowers the barrier, because human beings are naturally lazy. They don't want to move. They don't actually want to have to do anything. They want it to come to them. So you're going to do the work. You're going to have to find where they are and go to them with your message. So that's the first thing. Understand your absolute perfect client. Okay, now we need to talk about crafting a compelling message, because once you've got them captured as a potential lead, you now need to make sure that their language that you're using, the email that you're going to use in order to sort of take them to the next stage, having captured their attention, use action words in that headline. You'll have seen these all over the internet. You know, do this now, take action, improve, things like that. You need to motivate them and explain to them how, by taking the step towards your product, your offer will actually aid them and make them feel better. The irresistible offer. Now, the irresistible offer that you put to them is a way of appealing to their emotions and creating an action with them. The one thing that's really critical about an irresistible offer is it must have a time frame on it. You can't have an irresistible offer which is going to be there forever. An irresistible offer is an offer. It's where you say, I can help you with your solution, with my solution to your problem, but I can't do it forever. I'm going to have to withdraw this offer soon, because you're trying to motivate them to take action. And the one thing that motivates somebody to take action is the belief that it may not be available forever. So you must include that next step. And it's got to be benefit driven. Now, I want to talk a little bit about benefit, and I'm going to have to use a prop for this. So I'm just going to lean into my desk here. Can you all see that on screen? Do you all know what we're looking at now? Okay. Hopefully what you can see there is this is a stapler. It's a stapler now. Okay. This stapler is made of metal. Now, I see lots of people who send emails, who create adverts that are trying to attract those, and they'll say, this stapler is the solution to your problem. And they don't tell me why it's the solution. They'll talk about the fact that it's made of metal. I don't care it's made of metal, but I do care that because it's made of metal, this stapler will last me a long time. And I do care that because it's made of metal, it will drive staples through a thick piece of card. Those are benefits to me. And people talk about it being made of metal. The fact that it's made of metal is not important, but the fact that it's made of metal and will be a long-lasting stapler is of interest to me. Your statements to your customers, in order to ask them to move into becoming a customer, have to give the benefit of doing this thing, buying your product, engaging with your service. What's the benefit to them? Don't ask them to try and do that translation in their head. Explain it. My stapler is made of metal, and for that reason, it will last a long time, and it will cope with a large piece of cardboard to use with your stapling. You have to explain it, take the benefit and put it into their language. That's why it's so important to understand what your client's problem is and what your customer thinks and how they think, so that you can put the language appropriate to them. So we're moving on to the last of the bullets that I'm going to pull out, and that's the call to action. Calls to action are really, really critical, because having got the attention, having moved them to the point where they've got desire, because you've explained the benefit, you've used words in your headlines, your words that are crafted in order to generate desire, you've given them an irresistible offer, an offer which is going to last a few days or a few hours. You now need to tell them what happens next, because too many people leave the call to action as call me or buy now. Those are calls to action that you'll see often on the internet. Those are calls to action which I actually am quite critical of, because that calls to action doesn't actually tell the customer what they're committing to. If you happen to say, just click here, one of the things that's going through your potential customer's mind is, well, what happens if I do that? What am I committing to? So you need to tell them, click here in order to purchase this special offer, or click here to book a 15-minute call with me, because they need to know what's going to happen next. They don't naturally want to click because they're afraid that it might commit them to something they're not yet ready for. So you need to make it really, really easy. Don't, once again, I have a concept that I talk to people about. Why are you making it so hard? I talked about it just now with if your customer's on Facebook, don't make them go to Etsy. Or if your customer's on Etsy, don't make them go to Facebook. What you're trying to do is make it easy for them. What's the next easiest step? So your call to action not only tells them what's next, but you might want to say, this is going to be easy for them. After all, no one wants a marriage proposal on the first date. It's pointless asking them to click here, buy this very expensive product. It's only going to be available for a few days unless they're already committed to you. They might need to know a little bit more. Click here in order to see some more details. Click here in order to book a 15-minute call to talk to me and see whether or not I'm the right service provider for you. Click here in order to have this downloaded to your inbox in the next 15 minutes. Tell them what it is and make it an easy step. Don't ask people to overcommit, because too often we ask people to take a large leap and they're naturally hesitant. And as I said before, you always have to make these time bound. Nothing can last forever. You have to tell them that they need to take action now. Too often I see calls to action where people are not asking for them to take immediate action, and those customers will drift away because they'll say, I've got time tomorrow, I've got time next week, I'll go do it another time, I'm busy now, there's other things I've got to do, so I'll put that on the back burner, I'll leave it. Time bound it, make it something that's going to happen, so you drive them towards becoming a customer sooner rather than delaying it. The one thing that I do think that you do need to make sure is absolutely nailed on is to understand that you must follow up with these qualified leads. Follow up is something which is done very badly by most salespeople. It's often something which is extremely embarrassing to a lot of people. But actually, follow up shows real loyalty and respect for your customer. 44% of salespeople give up after their first follow-up attempt, and 48% never even make one in the first place. But you'll find that most customers actually say no 4 times before saying yes. It takes a lot of effort for people to trust you. We go back to that. What is it about you that they see that they might need to build trust? A lot of people will say no first time. So you have to follow them up. You have to give them another opportunity in order to understand that you are the right product, you're the right service provider for them. You need to ask them again. And you need to be personal about it. Please don't send those follow-up emails, dear customer, or dear person, or just checking in. You must capture some information. We talked about it in my previous masterclass about how you capture enough information to be personal with them, because personalization shows how often that you are taking into account how they've come on a journey with you. So what sort of lead they are. Are they one that's ready to buy now? Are they one that's fully qualified, or do you still need to know some information about them? It is absolutely in your interest to be personal. And finally, you should be practical, but please, please, please ask for the order. I work with a lot of sales teams who have this desire to get the order from a customer, but never actually ask the question. They sort of leave it hanging. They'll say things at the end of a sort of discussion with somebody, is that okay? And the answer is, yeah, that's okay. And they'll go, terrific. Any more questions that you need to ask? No, no more questions. I have no more questions. Terrific. And they'll leave it at that point. Well, until you say something along the lines of, are you ready to buy? Do we need to have any more conversations before we can sign the order? Shall I put the order in front of you? Shall I ask? You have to ask for the order. At some stage within your discussions with your client, either electronically or face-to-face, you have to say, now's the time to put pen to paper and actually ask for the order. Now, don't be embarrassed about it. A lot of us get very embarrassed about how do we ask for the order. But the fact of the matter is, the asking for the order is something that most customers want you to do. They're waiting for the opportunity. They don't know when they're supposed to say, are we ready to do this thing? And they won't actually initiate it because they're waiting. You're guiding them through a process. So they will often sit there and go, I don't know what's supposed to happen next. But the one thing they do want to know is, are we at the point where I have to say yay or nay? And you need to get to the stage where you give them the opportunity by asking for the order. I was working with a sales team recently, and the one thing they said to me was, well, how often should we try and follow up with a customer before we actually know whether they're interested in buying? And I said, okay, let's go through a few statistics. This is the sort of process I use with potential customers. I follow them up for something along the lines of 21 days. On the first day that we get to speak to each other, I will send them an email. Normally, I try and do that within an hour. Now, it would depend upon your business and upon your product or service. You may need to send them an email or make a phone call within a minute. You might need to send them an email within an hour. I normally can try and do it within an hour because I like to know that they've got my interest as well. They're interested in me. I know that I'm interested in them. I then send them a second email about day 3 or day 4. I'm not necessarily at this stage expecting them to buy, and I'll come on to what's going on beside this at the moment. Then about day 7, I make a phone call. Now, I've got to have, at some stage, have captured a phone call to be able to do that, a phone number to do that. Not always easy. Some don't like to give it, but I've normally got a phone number. I'll give them a phone number. Then I'll send them a LinkedIn message. LinkedIn is the generation system for me because I'm doing a lot of work that's business to business, but you might need Instagram, you might need TikTok. There's normally a way of following up. If it's not one of those, then you're probably back to using email. Then there's a second email in this tranche of emails, and then a quick follow 3 email. Then about day 14, I send another phone call message. I might get voicemail, something like that. And it's that point that I'm saying, okay, we've now done 6 or 7 contacts. You're not getting back to me. I'll come to some statistics in just a second. I then, about a week after that, I send them what I call my breakup email. Now, the breakup email normally gets a response because I know they've been interested, and I'll tell you how I know they've been interested. But I know they're interested. I know they just haven't made a decision. So I basically turn around and say, you know, that offer, it's gone, it's off the table. You've got to respond within the next couple of hours. The reason I know this is because I've done some work. I found out that the best time to call a lead is between 4 and 5. I know that if I get a 400% increase in lead response by contacting the lead within the first 5 minutes of them getting onto my website or whatever. I know the chance of getting a response on the first attempt is only about 11%. Most people are wanting to wait to get more information with me. By the 6th attempt, I get a 90% response rate. And what really disappoints me is if I go out and I speak to sales teams and people who are running businesses that I'm working with, most sales reps try a far less than 6 times. Most have given up after 2 or possibly 3. And one of the reasons they do that is if you go onto the internet and look up this sort of thing on the internet, most people on the internet are saying give up after 3. It isn't true, because as you've seen, when I get to the 6th attempt, I get a 90% response rate. But I find that most of the people that I've worked with give up after 3. Most sales teams that I said give up after about 3 or possibly 4. They never get to that 6th attempt where you suddenly see an increase. One of the reasons I know that people are still interested in talking to me is because during these emails where I'm sending follow-up emails, I'm also sending them what I call engage and nurture emails. We talked about that on the previous masterclass, these drip emails that are coming out all this time. And you can see the response rate. You can see if they're opening them. And if they're opening them, but they're not responding to this email by day 11, you know that they're kind of interested, but there's something else going on, which is why by day 14, I'm giving them a call and saying, I kind of know there's something going on. What's the hold up? So you have to use this sort of statistic to sort of work out what's going on. Okay, let's just summarize this, because we like to leave some time in order to be able to answer some questions and things like that. So let's just run through what I've tried to tell you today. First of all, your perfect client. You cannot sell your product or service to absolutely anyone. I've said this on a number of occasions to people when I've been told it can be sold to anybody. And I nearly always turn around and say, is it applicable to a 4-year-old girl? And a lot of people go, well, no, obviously not that. So eventually, by whittling it down, you can see there is a perfect client. So you have to get very clear on who they are, what the problem is that they have, and that you know how to solve. So get really clear. Who is the person? Think of a person. What is their problem? It could be that they just like handbags or they like briefcases, and you've got the perfect briefcase. So you now have to give them the opportunity to buy that. You have to generate a steady stream of leads. It's absolutely vital. And you have to make sure that those leads are qualified for your product or service based upon their fit to that perfect client. You then have to give them a really good call to action. You have to tell them the next step in doing business with you, and you have to tell them what is within that step so that they're not afraid to take the step. You have to explain to them what's going to happen, what's the process. You make the steps small, you ask them to make a commitment, but the one thing you do is you ask them to make a commitment. And you have to, at some stage during the journey, ask them to do the business, to actually commit to your product or service. But you need to follow them up. You won't get anywhere if you don't ask more than once. You have to ask, you have to keep in touch, you have to follow up because it's respectful, but you need to be respectful of their time. But you need to follow up because most people will not commit to you or your product or service on first interaction. You need to nurture and engage them. You need to continue keep coming back to them, and you need to ask them for the order. Most salespeople, most business owners give up very quickly, and that lead, that person will drift away and they'll go and find their product somewhere else. You need to keep going and keep respectful, but keep close to them and ask them for the order. Summary: to sell your product or service, offer a solution to a person who has a problem and keep in touch with anyone who has shown an interest. I think, Alice, I can answer questions about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stuart. And actually, sorry, let me turn my fan off because that's going to annoy me. We have a couple of questions, which is amazing. So Catherine says, is there a lead generation masterclass? More specifically, one for those trying to bring customers to them rather than selling a product. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you covered that in your last masterclass, Stuart.
I feel like I covered that in the last masterclass, Alice. So just to briefly answer that question, yes. What basically, although it is applicable to products, I talked about the process that I've talked to people. I will just go very, very rapidly through it, just so that people can get and the thing that I talked about was this. Oh, God, I've got a lot of slides to go back, or a lot of animation. It's this. So I talked about the fact that I asked people to put together a landing page which explains. We broke down the anatomy of that landing page at the time. The key thing about the landing page is that you capture an email address. You use your social media in order to point people to the landing page. So you'll be posting about your product or service and say, find out more here. You will also be doing things like, let me illustrate that I'm actually a real person by posting about my life. And if you want to find out more about me, go here. And part of what you do is you capture an email address so that you can do that lead and engagement nurture and that I talked about, so that you can keep in touch with them. And obviously, if you've got an email address and they came onto your landing page and gave you that email address, you can then follow up emails and go, what can I do to help you? What information do you need? And you become very personal in those follow-up emails. But that was the essence of the last masterclass.
Amazing, thank you. And I was just going to say, we've mentioned it a couple of times. So what I'm going to do is I will send you all an email in the next 24 hours with a link to Stuart's previous masterclass. And I am also just about to pop a link. Stuart has very kindly signed up to host another masterclass with us in July. It is going to be 30th of July and is all about pricing. So I will pop a link to that one in the chat in a second. But James very kindly popped a question for us earlier on in the presentation. And the question is, are there nuances with the principles based on the demographics, i.e., will some audiences not be driven by emotions in the irresistible offer? Now, I think that was when we were talking about closing the deal quite early on.
Yeah. The answer to your question is very definitely yes. And this is where we come back to the question which I posed to you, which is, how do you understand your perfect client? And I'm just going to get back to that, sort of go back to it. You need to understand their interest and pain points. So yes, sometimes you're going to be trying to appeal to their emotions, but some of the people that will be within your perfect client could be very technical people and want the technical information. So give up with emotions on those, present them with the technical information they want. You could be trying to appeal to somebody who is who has a background in a different sort of demographic to you. You need to understand the way they think. As I said to you during this part of the presentation, the thing that you need to understand is, what's the product or service that you've got that helps to solve their needs? And then you need to put it to them in their language. Communication, as I've said, and I've preached this a lot to a lot of people recently, communication is not what you do. A lot of us now believe that if we fire off an email, we've done it. We've communicated. You haven't. Until such time as somebody has read that email and acted upon the information within it, you've communicated nothing. It's a bit like if a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears it, did it make a noise? Well, the answer is, if you stand in the middle of a forest and shout your message and nobody hears it, have you communicated anything? Have you told anybody about your product or service? The answer is no. So the only thing you can do is work out how they best hear you, be that writing, be that literally through being told, spoken. You need to then go to their language, their thinking, their way of understanding, and put your solution to their problem in their language. If it's not emotion, it might be technical. If it's not technical, it might be all about colors. But you need to find the thing that they care about and tell it to them in the way that they do it.
Amazing, thank you. Jill, I have messaged you separately about accessing emails because I know you're having problems with the begin course too, so don't worry, we will fix that. I am just skipping ahead to Quintin. Does this translate easily to an e-commerce business where you don't have a phone number? I guess that's in terms of getting leads there.
Yeah. So the answer to that is, Quintin, yes. I because of my type of business, because it involves having to talk to people about what their business needs are, I need to get a phone. I'd like to capture a phone number. It doesn't always happen, but I like to get a phone call. But if you don't have a phone call and you don't have their LinkedIn account or anything like that, you could do each of these as an email. You could do each of these as a social media message. The thing that you need to do is, as I said, you can't just expect them to come to you and buy. You need to go to them and help them to understand how your solution applies to their problem, and you need to do it in a respectful way. And I think that doing something like this is highly respectful, to be honest. I think that doing a number of emails sort of saying, just following up, making sure that you've got all the information you need. If there's anything else you want, please let me know, is respectful of their time, but at the same time, giving them you do realize you've got to actually make a decision at some stage. And how do I help you to make a decision? Because I want to help you overcome the problem you've got.
Yeah, that's really helpful, actually. And it leads really nicely into Richard's question. So Richard has asked, when you're capturing a lead, do you recommend a web form, or is it better call to action and online chat? So that's kind of a bit of a lead, I think, there. Maybe we can touch on how to actually collect up the leads.
So, Richard, sorry, was it Richard? I've just,
yes, it's Richard.
Yeah, Richard. What's more appropriate for your lead is the way I would get out of jail free on that one. If I use both, and I've worked with businesses who use both, you will be surprised that some people don't want to hang around and complete a chat. They just want to get out of here. So they will want to complete a form. There are some people who will want answers immediately, and they will effectively go through this cycle here, the one that I'm pointing out now, in 14 minutes, not 14 days, because they want to be on a chat, they want to get the information they want to make a decision now. So it's appropriate for your customer. Because you're likely to find both, I would suggest you have the ability to capture both. So we're on a chat. We can, and if you haven't made a decision at the end of it, leave us your email. We can give you more information or whatever, and then capture as much as you can. So you have to be, essentially you have to get yourself into their head and decide how they'd like to communicate with you, and make sure that those are available. I have this concept that I talk to people about, and I think I mentioned it. Why do you make it so hard? I have a number of businesses that I often have to go into situations where the business is in some sort of trouble, and I'm asked to go in and sort of find a way of turning it around. It was one of the jobs I did for a while. And the thing that I've always found is that business has decided the best way for them is to do it this way. And that always means that there's trouble for the business. The best thing for the customer is to do it the customer's way. So if you want to be successful with your customer, get into their head. How do they want to communicate with you? And then make it available for them.
Thank you, Stuart. You're always so thorough in your answers. It's really, really lovely. And I feel like everyone really gets a lot from these sessions. So thank you very much. Vanessa's asked if you have access to the slides. Don't worry, Vanessa, we are sending out the recordings. You'll be able to go through the slides there. Olu has asked how this would work with a training program. Now that's a very specific example and one that we might want to pick up in a one-to-one mentoring session. Don't know if you want to add anything there.
I suppose that the easy thing to say, Olu, is if I'm honest, training is just another form of service. So what is it they want to get out of the training? You have to do that. So to a large extent, you have to. I mean, if somebody's booking a training course, the first thing you have to do is understand what needs to go in it. And once you've got to that stage, then you can tailor it. Training is just another form of service. These processes, this thing that I'm talking about here, they're largely built around making that successful.
Amazing, thank you. And I will be sharing the one-to-one link for you guys in a little bit as well, because I know lots of you will be keen to take these discussions further. Leo has said, what an incredible combination of online and traditional marketing strategies for lead generation.
It's only about half of what I use actually, Lou, but there you go.
And they have asked, firstly, do you keep the potential email list or do you opt them out after 21 days? And I love this question.
So no, the answer to that is I do keep their email after 21 days. I send them the breakup email, which basically says you're getting no more emails, but they stay on my list. So they actually do get more emails. What they don't get is highly personalized follow-up emails. So they'll carry on with the lead, the drip campaign, and I send like a weekly email to all of the people that I've got on my list. They always have the option to unsubscribe if they're no longer interested. And after about 2 years, I take them off anyway, because if they're not interacting, they're obviously not interested. But the 21-day breakup email is a bit of a, you had the opportunity to take this offer. This offer is going away. I'm sorry that you've not had the opportunity to take it up. In 24 hours, this is going to have doubled in price. So it's your last opportunity. But after that, you're not going to be getting this offer. You'll just have to come in at the normal price. And then they do stay on the list because they'll see, and other offers will be presented on the list. But I don't advertise that to them at day 21.
And just to follow on from that, do you add them to your kind of mailing or newsletter list, Stuart?
Yes. Yeah.
That's really handy. And we have lots of content coming up about email marketing soon, so that's as well.
This is ideal for that. This is an ideal way of capturing that and keeping them on that list to engage them.
Yeah, brilliant. And then Leo had a second question, which is, could you tell us more about getting referrals, please?
Oh, right. So referrals is an entire marketing technique of its own. So very briefly, I don't tend to use the word referral. Referral has got connotations of referral marketing and things like that. People get a little bit worried about referrals. I talk to people about joint ventures because referral should always be two-way. If you're doing something for me, I should be doing something for you. So I talk a lot about joint ventures. Joint ventures are effectively a way of saying we have got common interest. And the common interest is a similar customer base, a complementary service, complementary product. So we should find ways of helping each other. Let me give you an example. A joint venture can be very productive between a florist and a wedding venue because they've got a common customer. So person comes along to a wedding venue and the wedding venue says to them, if you want 10% off your floral order, go to this person we recommend. The florist has a common interest with the wedding venue, and the wedding venue want to get the very best flowers and the best experience. That's a joint venture. They've agreed together to work to satisfy that customer and give them the best experience. So I don't like referrals, but I do like about joint ventures. And what you try to do with a joint venture is think about the way in which you both have got a common interest and how you both adapt your way of working to help that common customer that you've both got get the best out of both of your services or both products, because I use a product with the florist and the wedding venue.
I love that shift in mindset. So clever, isn't it? How a quick shift in language can really change how you approach it.
And for me, Alice, the referral is a problem word because it's been bent by people who are into multi-level marketing and things like that, which people feel a bit dirty about. So I don't. It's not that there's any difference between what I'm saying and what some of those people are saying, but what we're trying to do is put the emphasis on both parties helping their common customer get the best from their service or product.
Exactly. I love that. And Leo says, thank you. Lots of people saying thank you in the chat there. I want to jump to Jill's question, which is, do you have any secrets on how to get people to answer the phone? Which is a great question.
Oh gosh, yeah, secrets. Do you know, I'm sorry to have to say there are no secrets. People are getting more and more nervous about answering the phone nowadays. I said one of the things that I found is ringing at the end of the day. If you ring in the middle of the day, people are absolutely busy. So the best time that I found to call a lead is between 4 or 5. The other thing I put into some of these follow-up emails is I will tell them in this email and in this email, I'm going to give you a call in 3 days' time between 4 and 5. If you're not available, let me know. Or if there's a better time, please let me know that time. So I actually tell them in this email, and I tell them in this email that they're going to get a call from me. Surprisingly, on this one, I get people answer the call. They answer the call on this one, and they will turn around and go, "Oh yeah, I was expecting it." And at that point, you turn around and go, "Well, what can we do to talk about what it is I'm trying to do to help you and what your problem is?" People are reticent about answering the call because they've been a lot of telemarketers that are trying to sell them stuff they don't want. The fact that you've tried to engage them, you've been respectful, you've asked them whether or not there's any further information they want. And at this point on day 12, you turn around to them and you say, I'm going to make a phone call. Are you okay about that? They'll normally turn around and go, yep, okay, I was waiting for your call. And it's about respect. It's about building that trust. It's about giving them the information they actually really want, and then they're ready to make a decision. So what you do is you say on day 12, I'm going to give you a call. And 2 days later, they'll answer the phone and go, yeah, I'm kind of interested. So what do we do next?
I love that. And just to follow on from that, do you leave voicemails? Do you find voicemails? Yeah. Because I was going to say, I'm really terrible. I will screen calls all the time. But if somebody leaves me a voicemail, I'll actually listen to it and then get back to them.
I'll tell you the other thing, Alice, which is what a lot of people don't do. Once again, with the voicemail, so many people leave this sort of, it's a bit like the call to action. It's a bit like, if you'd like to get back to me, or it's just me following up. I'm really, once again, really specific with my call to action. This is Stuart. I'm ringing up about such and such. I'd like to have a conversation. I'm going to be leaving you this way of getting back to me. So this is my number. If you'd like to send me an email, please would you respond by 2 o'clock tomorrow if this is something you need now? Because I want to move the conversation forward. I don't want to leave it as just get back to me. I want to move the conversation. So every voice message I leave, I'm trying to actually move the conversation forward. Even with colleagues, I actually sort of say, we don't necessarily need to have this meeting. This is what I want. This is what we need to do, blah, 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 blah. So if you could take it from here and take it to this, don't leave these voice messages, which are like, can you get back to me? Can you get back to me doesn't tell me what you need me to do. I tell them what I need them to do, and I actually try and move it on. So once again, with a voice message, it would be like, I'm ringing up to say this. So this is the information you wanted. This is what I'd like to happen. I'd like to sort of have a conversation with you. If you need any more information, and just try and move the conversation forward.
I love that. I think that's really clever, kind of putting in those mini deadlines or mini milestones just to keep things moving. That's a really great tip that I think lots of us could definitely implement, myself included. If there are any more questions, guys, you have got 10 more minutes, so we can keep them coming. There's some fantastic things. Lucy asked for your LinkedIn. Stuart, if you're happy, I can link your LinkedIn, but I have linked you on the platform as well. But we always double check for privacy, but you've given the thumbs up. So I will also link Stuart's LinkedIn there. Gosh, how many times am I going to say link? But let me pop the one-to-one mentoring link. Oh, it's giving me a funny noise. Here we go, meet with Stuart. So that is Stuart's personal booking link on the platform. Obviously, he is just one person. So if you would like to chat with Stuart and you want to send a request, please do give a couple of dates that are a little bit into the future so we can hopefully slot you in. However, if Stuart isn't available for any reason, we have lots and lots and lots of mentors on the platform who can support you. So I'll also pop the more general mentoring link in the chat for you as well. And we've got lots and lots of topics. If this has kind of sparked other avenues, if you want to go in and explore your branding or your pitch deck or anything like that, we've got lots of people to support you. We will go to Rachel's question and then I will grab that LinkedIn link for Lucy. But Rachel has said, any recommendations for CRMs for business with lots of customer segment? What a fantastic question.
So I'm going to get really, really vague here and say, I'm not going to give you a specific one. I have got a couple of favorites. The problem with most of these is that you have got to work pretty hard at your segmentation. So I've worked with a number of different CRMs. I've worked with CRMs that people have built themselves. And the problem nearly always has been that somebody has thought that it will be really clever to segment things, and they don't have enough ways of segmenting the data. So I'll fudge it a little bit and say, yeah, there are some good ones out there. But please, please, please be really, really sure that you've got your segmentation right. Get into the head, I've talked about it in the perfect client, get into the head of your client and really work out if that's the way they want to be communicated with, and that's really the language they use, and then use your segmentation. Most CRMs nowadays are pretty good. Some are very simplistic, and so therefore and if I'm honest, the more you pay, the more you get, and that's one of the things to do. So if you've got a lot of segments, you're probably having to pay a little bit more, but be absolutely sure that you've got your segmentation right. Otherwise, you're just going to send out a bunch of messages that are going to land badly, and you're going to be wasting a lot of money, a lot of time trying to communicate with a customer who's just not understanding you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and thank you for that, Stuart. And I think this question's come up a lot recently. I know a lot of you are kind of managing your data and working on your CRMs, and it's worth noting that of the CRMs I've seen, many of them will offer kind of free versions or freemium versions, or at least a free trial. So although it's a little bit of a pain to kind of be importing your data maybe a couple of times, at least you can have a little play around and you're not risking any money and kind of figure out what kind of interface you like. We do have mentors on the platform who specialize in customer relationship management software. So if you did want to have a little discussion about that, we will be more than happy to talk to you and kind of guide you through the rough kind of do's and don'ts, and then work with you on your customer segments as well, Rachel. So definitely book a one-to-one. We do have a couple more minutes for questions. It is obviously nearly 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, so if we still all the questions, we can give you 5 minutes of time back. But Rachel's going to go ahead and book. Amazing. Well, what I wanted to say was I will definitely will be emailing you a copy of the replay. I'm going to also include a copy of Stuart's previous session, and I will also send you a link to his upcoming session as well. So you've got all of the goodness from Stuart in one email for you. And Leo's got a question there for us. So we're dipping a little bit more into segmentation. So again, one we might direct to a one-to-one mentoring session. However, Leo's question is, how do you segment potential customers in the nurturing stage, e.g. email, phone number, social media, etc.?
So in the nurturing stage, I tend to, so there are two things going on in the nurturing stage. In the nurturing stage, I'm trying to do two things, one of which is give them more information about the solution to their problem. So I need to spend some time explaining their problem to them so that we're clear upon the fact that I understand their problem. So I spend, if you like, in the nurturing email, the first paragraph might be about, here's a problem, here's what the problem means, and I believe it's in your language. The second bit of the email is, and this is how you can deal with the problem and the solution I've got for it. So the segmentation I'm doing there is I'm doing it around the language that I'm using in order to try and explain that problem to them and the solution that I've got. So I'm needing to sort of understand some of the demographics behind them in order to be able to do that. If I don't have enough information on that, I tend to make it fairly generic. And I make it generic enough that I just explain through through something that I call social proof. I'll talk an awful lot about, here was a customer, they were in this situation, and this is how they got out of it. And this is what we did to help them. So we're doing it through explanation of somebody that they could identify with. So they might look at it and go, yeah, that's kind of my situation. So in terms of segmentation, I'm not so much worried about their email address or things like that. I'm trying to understand what their specific problem will be and what I understand about how to explain to them how my solution fits with their problem.